Здравейте на всички и добре дошли на третия национален семинар по програма Коперник, организиран от Сдружение Geopolymorphic от Института за космически изследвания към Българска академия на науките и кластера по аерокосмически технологии и изследвания. Радвам се, че пак успяхме да бъдем заедно в следващите 2 дни. Подготвили сме доста интересна програма. Всички сте я видяли, предполагам, на страницата на събитието. Но нека за начало да дам думата на професор Желев, за да каже няколко приветствени думи по откриването на семинара. Професор Желев, заповядайте.
Здравейте, благодаря. Здравейте на всички. За мен е наистина голямо удоволствие отново да се съберем на този семинар под егидата на организаторите в лицето на Geopolymorphic Cloud, разбира се, нашия институт с Коперник Академия и членовете на мрежата на Copernicus Realize, както и колегите от Кастра, разбира се. За мен е голямо удоволствие да участвам. Знаете, в института ни от над 50 години вече се изгражда една научна школа, която е в областта на фундаменталните космически изследвания, разбира се, но благодарение на тези продукти и Коперник програмата, продуктите, услугите и данните, които тя предоставя, ние можем не само да работим спокойно, но да обучаваме докторанти и магистри в една спокойна, дигитална, отворена, модерна система, едно модерно общество по актуалните за основно дистанционните изследвания на Земята тематики. Това са опазване на околната среда, изследване на атмосферата, изследване на океаните и моретата, изменението на климата и екологията, както и в областта на сигурността и превенциите от природни бедствия и аварии. Така че това глобално количество данни, услуги и готови продукти, които непрекъснато се увеличават и дава тази програма, е адмирация към организаторите. И искам да изкажа адмирация към организаторите, точно за това, че те ни помагат да популяризират тези данни и възможностите да работим с тях. Разбира се, пожелавам и на всички участници, както и на нас, да придобием още нови знания с данните и продуктите и услугите, които дава програмата Коперникус. Така че благодаря и успех на конференцията.
Благодаря.
И сега от мое име също да поздравя всички присъстващи, които до момента онлайн в Zoom са около 26 човека, както и панелистите, които след малко ще включим за първите презентации. И тъй като семинар е национален, но е с международно участие, ще поздравя и чуждестранните гости. Welcome to the third national workshop for the program Copernicus. I would like to announce the first presentation, which is for the novelties of the program Copernicus, or the Copernicus second edition or 2.0. The presenter is Annekatrien Debien from the Copernicus Support Office.
Thank you very much, Lachezar, and thank you both, Lachezar and Vassil, to invite me this morning to present at the Copernicus for Bulgaria National Workshop. It's a pleasure to see so many people already here. Without further ado, I will jump into the presentation. Let me see. Just checking if you can see my full screen.
Yes, it's okay. Thank you.
I will be starting directly with what is new in Copernicus. I assume that everyone here present is already quite familiar with the program, with the space component and its sentinels, with the Copernicus services on land, marine, emergency, climate, atmosphere, and security. Let's go and see what is new, because recently, or it feels recently with the whole pandemic, the European Commission has reshaped Copernicus and the EU space program in general. They've together with the other priorities of the European Commission, they have shaped a new space strategy for Europe, whereby the idea would be to maximize the benefits of space for society and the EU economy. Making sure that here in Europe or the European space sector becomes globally competitive and innovative. There's a strong focus as well on Europe's autonomy in accessing space, so in launching satellites to space, for example, in a safe and secure environment. So this is where the security component comes in quite strongly, a lot stronger than in the past. And to strengthen Europe's role as a global actor and to promote international cooperation. So those are things that show that the European Commission is really broadening what the EU space program, what Copernicus should mean. It's evolving from a tool or a set of data that we can use to monitor our environment to something much bigger that can contribute as well to a more prosperous Europe in the future. And I've mentioned already, so there is now the EU space program. The EU space program is actually now the one program that is mentioned in the official regulation for the next 7 years. And it includes all of the EU space activities under one umbrella. So everything is now commonly branded with of course, the separate components. You, of course, know Copernicus. It will remain the Earth observation component of the EU space program. Then Galileo, the European GNSS provider, and EGNOS, which is for making navigation signals more secure and more accurate. Those are components that already existed and now got put under this one umbrella. And then there were new components that were launched. GovSatcom, or governmental secure satellite communications, for governmental actors mainly, which will support emergency humanitarian aid and security related communications, satellite communication. Space situational awareness, which is everything from space surveillance and tracking, so making sure that satellites are in the orbit that they're supposed to be, space weather events that might affect life on Earth, such as solar flares or near Earth objects, and then we're talking about asteroids, for example, to be able to monitor this. This is also a new part of the EU space program. And then that EU space program is supported by other initiatives, very importantly, access to space. So there is a very strong focus now on making sure that the European launchers are being used for European satellites. Only recently, there was a big framework contract signed with Arianespace, for example, to be launching the next EU satellites. There's a big chunk of funding as well available through the research and innovation, so Horizon Europe, for example. Entrepreneurship is supported through the Cassini initiative, where they will make up to 1 billion euros available through combined public-private funding to really support entrepreneurship in the space sector, and then further capacity building on an international level and standardization efforts, which will also be kicking off soon. Perhaps to throw in there, because it's a question that we often get, with the launch of the EU space program, there was also the transformation, let's say, of the European GNSS Agency, or GSA, in Prague to the EU Agency for the Space Program, or EUSPA, EUSPA, different kinds of pronunciations. And so EUSPA will be collaborating with the already existing access of the European Commission and European Space Agency and trusted entities for the Copernicus services, in that they will be providing really the backbone for the market development and user uptake of Copernicus towards new users. So what does that mean? The European Commission will still be doing a lot of work on making sure that existing users or national, governmental users, for example, will keep on having access to Copernicus, will use Copernicus data, but EUSPA will focus on users such as new market segments in the telecommunications operators, the textile industry. So it really going beyond the existing users and seeing what the business cases are for Copernicus in a much broader context. So I've already mentioned that the EU Space Program and Copernicus is also closely linked to what von der Leyen mentioned already a few years ago, the focuses that she wants to have as the European Commission. And in very briefly, what is really driving the transformation of Copernicus is these goals that the European Commission in general has for our future, that it needs to become more greener, more digital, and more resilient, so to be non-dependent. And that is really then also where Copernicus would be evolving to. And that is then linked to 4 different features or parts of the program where the Commission has looked into how should we evolve it, how to be greener, to be more digital, to be more resilient. And so I'll touch briefly upon each of the different sections. So there's data acquisition. How do we acquire the data from the satellites, the Copernicus services, distribution and access. How do we get the data to the end users? And then user uptake. How will that be evolving? So the first block is data acquisition. We have, of course, the existing series of Sentinels, whereby in the very near future, we'll start to see the launches for the C and D satellites. So for Sentinel-1, Sentinel-2, Sentinel-3, we already have the A and B satellites launched. C and D, especially for Sentinel-1, will be coming up in 2023. And they will be so that there is always a continuity and of the data stream itself. And then there are Sentinel-4, Sentinel-5 that will also soon be launched on EUMETSAT satellites, and where we can also be expecting future launches. But I'll get to that as well in a second. Because what is also really what a lot of people are looking forward to is the Copernicus expansion missions, which the new missions that were proposed a few years ago that are now out of the first design phase, and that are 6 missions that could provide a whole new range of information, of data for us to be able to be used in applications. The 6 missions are still in the pipeline. I know that there have been discussions about whether there's anything prioritized or not. There isn't really. All of the 6 missions are still in the pipeline. There is a decision point on which ones to launch at what point after 2024. So they're all being developed, with the one exception of the Copernicus anthropogenic CO2 monitoring mission, CO2M, which needs to be launched as soon as possible, as we have the stock take in 2025, and the idea would be that CO2M would be providing unbiased, robust information about the carbon emission monitoring on our planet. So that is the one where the launch can be expected earlier than the others, but there are still all of the other satellites would still be in the pipeline. It might just take longer than initially envisaged. But I think that it's often the case with satellite launches. There can be delays and there can be postponements. So I'm just showing you the tentative schedule for the Copernicus Sentinel's deployments, with Sentinel-1C, for example, launching in 2023 to replace Sentinel-1B in the first place. The Sentinel-1D mission will most likely also be moved up a little bit to earlier. Sentinel-2C and 2D are also being prepared, as well as 3C and 3D. 4A will then and 5A will hopefully be launched in the next year as well. Those haven't been launched yet. And then we are coming up on the later years already, so it's getting a little bit too much in the future to know exactly about the exact launch dates. So that was the part for the data acquisition. So really for the space component. Now, we also have the data and the services processing, whereby the big driver for the Copernicus in general has always been these user requirements for public policies, and this is something that will keep on being the priority. Only there will be an evolution within the restrictions of the budget to take into account these new Copernicus expansion missions that we have. So to have services using, for example, the CO2M data for really CO2M monitoring services or applications. There will be more cooperation between the different services, whereby, for example, land already, or the coastal zone product from the Copernicus Land Monitoring Service is already an example of that cooperation between marine and land. So on the edge of marine and land, you have the coastal areas, and so that product was created collaboratively. There will be more thematic hubs for those cross-services application domains. So except for health, it's also going to be health, Arctic, and energy. These are already known, and there might be more in the future. And then there's a knowledge center for Earth observation, which will also be focusing more on how to get Copernicus into public policies. Because in the end, if Copernicus, for example, is mentioned in a public policy, such as in the Common Agriculture Policy, or in the very recently land use, land cover, carbon uptake policy, if it's mentioned as a tool, as a data set that can be trusted, then it's for on the more downstream side, for people who develop applications, it also becomes a very tangible thing, because it becomes more known, it becomes also something that might be required, and it becomes an opportunity for new applications, new commercial applications. On the data sharing, data distribution, data access side, there's more and more this push towards digital. So in the past few years, we've already had the data and information access services, the DIAS, which are slowly, well, their funding is slowly coming to an end, and this will be really move more towards the idea of the European the data spaces, which is part of the digital strategy, a more integrated data management, so that there's a more streamlined access to the Copernicus data and information, as well as to potential cloud processing services like the DIAS. And then there will be the cooperation with Destination Earth, which is a new flagship program of the European Union, but very much linked to what Copernicus can offer, to really have an end-to-end approach to the users. And so perhaps on the Destination Earth or Destiny, it's built on this whole green and digital transformation that the EU is looking at, with the idea that the destination Earth will be supporting decision making. So it will go one step beyond what is now delivered in the Copernicus services, for example, because it will generate insights that are tailored to the expertise of the user, so that you can also have policy users, for example, who don't have a technical background, to be able to go into Destiny and to get answers on, for example, extreme weather events, environmental changes, climate related challenges, to go in and say, like, okay, if we implement this and this kind of policy, what would be the impact? Would this have an actual impact down the line? So it will be heavily model based, to see if there's really if policies could be potentially effective, and with a clear link as well, not only to environmental impacts, but also to socioeconomic impacts. And then that will all be a common infrastructure for analysts and decision makers. So it's coming from EU investments in different DGs, in high performance computing, and the space data. So the Copernicus component is one of these data that is available, but there's also quite a bit of focus on other types of data, like IoT, for example, non-geospatial data, to really be able to generate models that can answer the questions that we have. And then finally, we have, once we have all of the infrastructure, we have all of the satellites, the information that is available, but how is that being taken up by end users? So there is already this focus on making sure that the Green Deal policies, the digital agenda can be turned into business development opportunities. One of these ways is by having Copernicus mentioned in regulations, for example. There's a Cassini initiative which fosters competitiveness and innovation. And there's also a lot more focus on internationalization of Copernicus and making sure that those the opportunities are available for European actors. So we have EUSPA involved quite a lot in there. Also the Copernicus Knowledge Center on EO and Horizon Europe. And just to quickly say on the public policy side, the Knowledge Center for Earth Observation was launched a year and a half ago, and is they are working specifically on making sure that the European Commission itself is taking up Copernicus, because yes, it's a European Commission-led program, but often there's still not a lot of knowledge in other Directorate Generals, such as DG Environment, who could really use the data in the DG Connect, which deals with digital, DG Agri on agriculture. So all of these DGs are being targeted by the Knowledge Center for Earth Observation. And they also collect new user requirements. So they are going to be the ones who are making sure that the user requirements at a public policy level are being taken into account for future Earth observation requirements, future satellites that we need to launch, or future Copernicus services. And then perhaps quickly going back to, so those are what the European Commission is doing, but there's also this component outside the European Commission. There's been a huge boost in new space companies over the last few years. And that is also helping Copernicus or challenging Copernicus sometimes to think a little bit more out of the box, to see where is there convergence, where can there be potential cooperation between new space and Copernicus, because they don't stand alone. So within new space, as you may know, so what you often have there is that the satellites that are being launched are a lot smaller. There are a lot more of them, which can lead to a higher revisit time, for example. The components that they use could be from off the shelves and be a lot cheaper. They become more powerful. They can influence how the launch costs are being reduced. And there's also this big data and AI onboard processing or cloud processing using AI to extract more insights from the Copernicus or any kind of satellite data. And so in the future, and this is not something, excuse me, this is not something that is set in stone or any kind of regulation yet, but Commissioner Breton, who leads the DG Defense Industry and Space at the European Commission, mentioned earlier this year that he really wants to see how the Copernicus Sentinels and New Space and the Copernicus expansion missions can work together, because for him it means that the second generation of Copernicus has to mean a greater responsiveness to urgent needs, a greater frequency of revisits, integration of new technologies, as well as openness to contributions that new constellations in low orbit may constitute. And so the idea would be that Copernicus really becomes more of a hybrid architecture by 2030, 2035. So this is something that hasn't been, this is a vision at the moment. It hasn't been put into any kind of regulations or even any kind of negotiations at this moment, but it will have these three elements of the Copernicus Sentinels, the expansion missions, and additional capacities delivered by New Space. What Commissioner Breton really wants is to have these startups to be involved in and to benefit from the EU space program. So this is it from my side. Are there any questions? Oh.
Thank you very much, Annekatrien. I will ask in Bulgarian if there are some questions. Ако имате въпроси, може да ги поставите или в чата, или да си включим микрофоните и да ги зададете директно към човека, който презентира преди това. Заповядайте, дали има въпроси? So, Annekatrien, if until the participants are thinking for their questions, may I ask something? Because we did two training sessions with two of the Copernicus thematic services with users. You mentioned several times that the services are evolving, some new services are added to each of the thematic services, but how in fact it is done in practice? I mean, how a user from one country could interact with Copernicus or some national institutions like user forums or in order to propose a need for a service or to propose a solution which could be added to already available services?
Yeah, I think it may depend a little bit from country to country, and also how the Copernicus User Forum interacts the national delegates. I think one important entry point are, in my view at least, the Copernicus relays. Because they also have a direct link to the European Commission, and while it's not the official way in, I think it's important as a way of providing user feedback to the European Commission. So you as Copernicus Relays or Copernicus Academy members, we would love to hear any kind of feedback that you hear from users.
So in each country it is different. In some countries there are strong bodies for the Copernicus. In other, there are only relays and academies which interacts with the European Commission.
Yep.
Right. Okay, thanks. We have a question in the chat forum. I will read it from Kremena Gocheva. The question is, how will the expansion of Copernicus relate to verification from in situ observation by research infrastructures?
Good question. In situ is not my expertise, but so as far as so within Copernicus, you have this in situ component in general. It's not very well known because the data themselves are not publicly available. But these in situ data are already being used and have been used in the past to verify or validate new Copernicus sentinels. It will be the same for the Copernicus expansion missions. After they're being launched, there will be an extensive calibration and validation phase using in situ observations. And I believe if and when that research institutes can also, if you have in situ observations, that these normally can also be shared with the European Environment Agency, which is managing the Copernicus in situ component, to help validate, for example, the new expansion missions.
Okay, thanks a lot. Do you think it will be interesting for the students probably? Do you think that for the expansion missions there will be such possibility for the research institutions to test the, what was the name, the simulated data of those missions?
I think that might be something we need to ask ESA or the European Commission. But that's a good point to ask, yes.
Okay, and probably the last question, because we already more or less reached the time to the end of the presentation. There is a question from Mr. Vassilev from Castra. I will also read it. Would you comment more on the plans for the development of the Copernicus ground segment, also through Horizon Europe?
I'm afraid I don't know the answer to that, but I will take the question and see if we can get an answer from the European Commission.
Okay, thanks a lot, Annekatrien, really. And this could be the last questions which we will ask now, but if there are more questions, please put them in the chat, or there is a question form on the website of the seminar. You could put it there also. We will make sure that they will be sent to the presenters. Now it is time for the second presentation, which will be given by the expert from the Ministry of Innovation and Growth in Bulgaria. I will go again in Bulgarian. Така, следващата презентация ще бъде от госпожа Петя Пиперкова, главен експерт в дирекция политики и анализи на Министерството на инновациите и растежа. И тя е свързана с новото подписано споразумение миналата година с Европейската космическа агенция. Направо да дам думата на госпожа Пиперкова. Заповядайте.
Добро утро! Здравейте на всички! Презентацията успях ли успешно да я споделя с вас?
Идеално, да. Всичко е. Благодаря.
Добре. Това, което днес ще представя, е информация относно новото споразумение за европейска кооперираща държава между България и Европейската космическа агенция. Секунда. Знаете, тази година България подписа на 15 февруари в Тулуза новото споразумение за европейска кооперираща държава. То продължава съвместната работа за развитие на устойчивостта и конкурентоспособността на българските предприятия в космическия сектор, както и тази за съхраняване на научния потенциал и предвижда разширяване на дейностите и ангажиментите на страните. Това е за България втори ПЕКС период, но той следва да отрази и засили амбициите на България. И това е в съответствие с препоръките в доклада на ЕКА за изпълнение на първият ПЕКС период. И както и препоръките на държавите членки, които бяха изказани в консултации още през 2020 година. Чрез новото споразумение България ще се включи за втори път в програмата на ЕКА или така наречения план за европейска кооперираща държава. И предвид това се предоставя възможност да бъдат разширени, както вече споменах, възможности за по-разширено сътрудничество с агенцията при изпълнение на проекти в областта на научно-приложните изследвания и високотехнологичните продукти и услуги. Освен това, ще бъде направен в самото споразумение се предвижда да бъде направен междинен преглед на успеваемостта, въз основа на който България ще има възможност да премине към следващ етап на сътрудничество и това в случая е асоциирано членство, преди да изтече 5-годишния срок на програмата. Но всичко това зависи от участието и на фирмите и реализирането на проектите, които да достигнат необходимото ниво на развитие. Споразумението този план цели да повиши готовността на българския космически сектор за пълноценно участие в програмите на ЕКА при бъдещо пълноправно членство на България в агенцията. Знаете, това става чрез участие на български фирми и научно-изследователски организации в процедури за подбор на проекти, които се обявяват от ЕКА по нарочна програма. Освен това, участието на България в споразумението осигурява и достъп до младежките програми на ЕКА за магистри и стипендианти, както и възможност за участие в взаимния обмен на експерти, научна и техническа информация, данни и стоки от взаимен интерес в областта на космическата наука, технологии и приложения. За информация, само споменаваме, че тази година тези стажански позиции бяха обявени още в началото на годината, през февруари и март. И все още не сме получили такава информация за българското участие в тях, но това ще бъде отчетено след този период. Изпълнението на споразумението е обвързано и с финансов ангажимент, който към момента възлиза на 1,5 милиона евро годишно, които пари реално членския внос финансира българските проекти, които участват в тръжните процедури на ЕКА за България. Отново за информация споменаваме, че тъй като през 2021 България удължи с 1 година договора на първото ПЕКС споразумение и предвид това стана възможно и провеждането на 7-та тръжна процедура на ЕКА за България. Резултатите от първият ПЕКС период. България подписа първото споразумение през 2015 и в изпълнение на програмата от онзи момент към края на първият ПЕКС период бяха регистрирани над 87 български организации, фирми и научни организации, които участваха в тръжните процедури. За този период се проведоха 7 тръжни процедури, постъпиха 127 проектни предложения и бяха одобрени за изпълнение 40-43 проекта. До момента средната стойност на финансираните проекти възлиза на 143 000 евро и използвания бюджет е приблизително 7 милиона. Отново за обща информация за аудиторията, смятаме за необходимо да споменем и 4-те етапа на сътрудничество за присъединяване и членство в ЕКА. Първият от тях, това е споразумение за сътрудничество. България при подписването на първото ПЕК споразумение преминава този първи етап на сътрудничество и подписва вторият за европейска кооперираща държава. Както знаете, всеки от етапите на присъединяване е обвързани с финансов ангажимент, както и за да бъде възможно присъединяването към всеки един от етапите, е необходимо и развит индустриален и административен капацитет. Отново за информация, тази година на 14 юни в Холандия България подписа и хартата на плана за европейска кооперираща държава. Тази харта е неразделна част от споразумението и чрез нея е възможно изпълнение на клаузите в него, които включват финансово участие, продължаване на изпълнението на текущите проекти, тези, които в случая не бяха приключили от първото споразумение, както и провеждане на тръжни процедури. Освен това, хартата дава възможност и да бъдат увеличени ангажиментите на страните по договора и като целта е да бъдат предоставени повече възможности за участие на българските фирми и научни организации в програмите на ЕКА и да бъде ускорен този процес за България към преминаване към асоциирано членство. Така, например, хартата даде възможност да бъде проведена и 8-та тръжна процедура, която реално е първата процедура от новоподписаното споразумение. И знаете, Министерство на иновациите и растежа на 28 юни проведе информационна сесия заедно с Европейската космическа агенция относно възможностите за участие на български фирми и научни организации към тази процедура. Експертите от агенцията дадоха и насоки относно критериите за участие в процедурата към всички заинтересовани страни. 8-та процедура беше отворена за подаване на проектни предложения на 18 юли и приключи на 22 септември. Тръжните процедури са насочени предимно към български фирми и академични изследователски организации и се отнасят към следните категории дейности: космическа наука, научни изследвания, телекомуникации, микрогравитационни изследвания, инженеринг и оползотворяване на наземния сегмент. Тук моята презентация ще приключи и само ще спомена, че вече имаме информация относно подадените проектни предложения към нея. За съжаление, техният брой е сравнително малък спрямо предходните и това са само 11 проектни предложения са подадени към тази процедура. Това, което към този момент успяхме да обсъдиме с колегите от Космическата агенция, което е положителна информация относно развитието на България, е, че срещаме увеличаване на българските фирми и включване на нови такива, които имат интерес към тези процедури. В тази връзка ние провеждаме редица работни разговори, в които търсим методи как да насърчим това участие, как да бъдем полезни към него и все още така от кухнята не е тайна, но все още не е планирано. Информацията, която мога да ви представя и да бъде от полза за вас, е, че предвиждаме в началото на следващата година да бъдат проведени 2 обучителни курса от ЕКА в началото и в края на годината, преди отваряне на следващата 9-та тръжна процедура, като тези курсове целят да помогнат на вас, на участниците в процедурата, и първият от тях ще бъде насочен именно към това как да бъдат разписани тези проекти. Ще бъде във ваша полза, тъй като все още наблюдаваме, че един от основните проблеми в участието на процедурите е именно слабо разписаните проекти. Освен това, в следващата презентация, сигурна съм, и Михеле ще представи още по-обстойно такава. Знаете, до сега 15 декември беше изпратена до всички контакти, с които ние разполагаме, както и колегите ни от Космическата агенция, информация относно провеждане на курс, който ще бъде проведен през май месец в ESA-PECS. Всъщност това е събитие, което цели да създаде контакт, да създаде международни контакти и партньорства. Всяка една от страните и участниците в него да представят фирмите там, да представят своите дейности и по този начин да се засилят, да създадем среда, която да засили и поощри създаването на международни контакти и партньорства. Ако тази информация не е достигнала до вас, ще ви я изпратим и ще оставя ще предам щафетата на Михеле, който също ще представи по-подробна информация относно съвместната ни работа. Надявам се да не пропусна нещо, но може би ще вметна и друга една такава работна за нас информация, която инициираме от доста време, но все още предвид промените и други фактори не е стартирала напълно работа. Това е тази информация, че ние създадохме в Министерство на иновациите и растежа работна група, която цели да разработи стратегия. Това ще бъде съответно и в продължение на проекта, който беше одобрен преди време от Космическата агенция, и се надяваме с това, с всички тези действия, да бъдем полезни на вас за създаването на една по-добра среда за работа, в която ще докажат всъщност вие и успеха във вашите проекти и развитие на всеки един от секторите, в който вие работите. С това смятам да приключа и благодаря за вниманието.
Благодарим и ние. Дали има въпроси директни? Госпожа Пиперкова? Или да чуем и презентацията на представители на Европейската космическа агенция и тогава евентуално за въпроси. Може един бърз въпрос. Споменахте накрая стратегия. Става въпрос за стратегия за космическа програма на България или нещо друго?
Това е стратегия, която цели да обобщи, да дефинира. Не бих нарекла програма, а стратегия, която да дефинира участието на всеки един от секторите към и дейностите, които са насочени към космическата политика.
Добре, благодаря. Въпроси последно или да преминем към другата презентация? Добре, няма за сега. Благодарим още веднъж.
Благодаря и аз.
So the next presentation will be given by Michele Iapaolo from the European Space Agency, and it will be related to the ESA-PECS activities in Bulgaria. Good morning, Michele.
Good morning.
Please.
Yeah, share the screen.
Извинете, госпожо Пиперкова, дали може да спрете вашия share?
Petya, I think you have to unshare because I cannot share my screen.
Yeah. Just a second. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, good. So can you see my screen?
No.
Share.
Yeah, it will start. Right. Perfect.
Okay. So following the presentation given from Petya, I didn't understand everything. We aligned before the meeting today, so I will try to focus more on some programmatic aspects for the future. It's also true that today the core of the discussion is on Copernicus, so this presentation is a bit out of scope because in our PECS program we don't deal only with Copernicus or Earth observation data, but it's more general and oriented in general to the space sector. But I will point out during the presentation the main parts that are or could be relevant for Copernicus in particular. So this is the outline, a general introduction on the PECS program, what it is, main objectives, how it is organized, how it is run, and a summary of the results obtained in the first PECS period. The first PECS period ended this year in February, and some analysis and recommendations for the future to come. This in particular in view of the start of the second PECS period, which has been triggered this year, started it officially in June. And as was also mentioned by Petya, we already had one first call, which is the 8th one in the long term, but the first one in the second PECS period. And then I will go quite quickly in this first part, and then maybe focus a bit more on what's the plan for the next year and the years to come. So let me, can you see well my screen, or? Because
yes, it is perfect.
It's perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So the PECS program is a program that is dedicated to cooperating states. So which means that the country is not officially a member of the European Space Agency, but we define a series of actions to cooperate in view of a future participation as an associate member. So this is the long-term objective. The period is organized in a time scale of 5 years that is renewable, as has been done. And the main purpose is to develop the national capabilities in space in order to be part of the ESA in the future. What this means in practice is that, especially if we consider the way ESA is working, we need to develop the industrial capabilities to participate in the ESA optional programs. So why this is very important? It is because internally in ESA, all the activities are run through these optional programs, and many states, many countries are participating to these programs. So in order to be successful in the future, all the European companies participate in open tenders. So if the industry is not prepared or not mature enough to compete with other European actors, it will be extremely difficult to obtain contracts in the future. And this is the main purpose of this PECS period, is not to limit the possibility of the country, but is more to develop the capabilities in order to be successful in the future. This comes also together with the creation of international links, cooperation with other entities and industry, a fruitful cooperation in the country between academia and industry, and the preparation of the national workforce through dedicated education programs. So this is the general path. As you can see, we are now in the plan for European cooperating states, and the idea is to reach the level of an associate member in a number of years, and we are working in this moment through the second PECS period. We are working with this purpose in mind. So I skipped one. This one is pretty legal. It gives the legal context. I will send you the slide in, after the workshop, so you can have it for your reference. So this is to summarize what I just said before. Here in particular, I would like to point out some aspects. So the first thing is that when we look at the long-term perspective, it's not enough to do research studies, but what we should aim is to reach the level of products and services at operational level. So products that can be sold on a market, can be sold to big large system integrators, like for example Thales, Alenia, or Airbus, or these big players, because being part of their supply chain is a way to be part of the space ecosystem. The second aspect is the cooperation between national academia and industry. This is essential because if we let's say split the work, the main focus of academia is to perform space research. But the second part, so the development of products and services that are derived or based on this space research, should be mandated to industry. So this cooperation and positive interaction between the two entities is really a key factor in order to be successful. In our program, also, we prepare the entities, both academia and industry, to participate in ESA programs in the future, because we are following standard procedures, and we are also following or implementing the ECSS standards for space. So starting since the beginning and taking into account these procedures and knowing the standards, and this can be done in PECS, is also a factor for being successful in the future. I already mentioned the importance of the international links and relationship with other entities in Europe, in particular in other ESA member states, of course. This could be with large system integrators, but could be also with partners, industrial partners, so small, medium enterprises, or in general with customers. So finding customers that can buy the products or the services is also a key point. And in general, this is to give an indication on how ESA is working. We tend to avoid a plain duplication of activities in many countries in order to avoid a competition that is not fruitful for anybody. So what we try to promote is to find niche areas where there is something missing in the European capabilities, something that is not done, or something that maybe can be done at a lower cost or with better performances. So any activity should try to focus on these aspects and not just replicate what has been already done in the past or what is being doing already by other companies. So for example, just to give an example, if you want to develop a spacecraft component, you need to differentiate from what already exists, because otherwise it will be extremely difficult for a company that is developing this component to compete with companies that already have in their portfolio. So the PECS program works through open calls, which means that we are not preparing a statement of works. So the requests for the work do not come from ESA, but we are relying on the ideas presented by the various entities. This is really a key factor of the PECS, because as the objective is to develop the country national capabilities, it's good to rely on what the capabilities are already there. And through the open call, this is possible. Because it's your own idea and is what you want to develop. So we open these calls for proposals, and then the submitted proposals are reviewed by a pool of experts. So there's quite a large number, between 6 and 9 experts that review each proposal. Then a tender evaluation board meets, and the proposals are discussed, and there is a final, let's say, ranking based on the marking that have been received by the proposals. And the TEB presents some recommendation if the proposal must be implemented or not. And then this is discussed with the Bulgarian delegation, of course, in order to verify that is compliant with the strategy and the objectives of the delegation, and to the ESA program boards to verify that is in line with the ESA programmatics. And then after getting this approval, this final approval, the activities are negotiated and then started. key important point is that what ESA releases is contracts, is not grants. So contracts means that the payments are done upon the receiving deliverables. Each proposal must present a list of deliverables, and upon the delivery of that, the successful verification that the deliverables meet the requirements, the payments are released. So it's not just funding, but is paying for something that should be produced. Another good point is that all the contracts are always managed by an ESA technical officer. And this is a key value for the entities participating, because they can rely on the expertise of these technical officers to get any consultancy, to ask for advice. So it's really a way to learn and improve the competences of the entities and industry. So I already explained this. So these are some notes basically. So I already mentioned the fact that we need to develop product and services up to the high TRL, so up to high technology readiness level. An important aspect is also that this development must have a long-term benefit. So it should not be for the sake of developing something in space, but should have some positive effect in the economy of the country and in the European space sector. So some capabilities or products that do not exist and can be reused in European missions, for example, or a service that is developed on the basis of satellite data, but is a service offered to the population of Bulgaria, like for example, the meteorological services or the navigation services. A very important point in PECS, and this is done with the main purpose of developing the international links and cooperation with other member states, is that 20% of the value of the contract can be given to entities outside Bulgaria. So the PECS calls are mainly addressing Bulgarian companies, but up to 20%, there's some budget that can be given outside in order to involve customers in the review of the product or in providing their requirements, partners that can do part of the work, a specific work package, and this kind of cooperation activities. So this is the timeline. We just started the second PECS period. The first one has been closed in February, and now I will give some just a very short analysis on what has been achieved in the first PECS period. So as you can see, we placed a total number of 42 contracts, and 16 of them are still running. Two, now I have to say one, because one really yesterday has been finalized. So one is still under negotiation. What I want to point out here is some measures that we need to improve, and we need to improve in order to be successful in our progression through the association membership. One is the success rate of proposals. We still face difficulties in having a large number of recommended proposals by the evaluation board. So the success rate, this must be improved. And to do this, we need to improve the quality of the proposals. And the other related aspect is to increase the average mark. So in order to be recommended in PECS, the average mark, the minimum mark is 55. So we put this threshold. The proposals can receive a mark between 0 and 100. So 55 is a bit slightly above the 50. But in order to be successful in the future, we really need to achieve a minimum mark of 60, but even 70. Because when participating in optional programs and being in open competition with other companies in Europe, it's extremely rare to have a proposal successful if the marking is below 70. So with some special conditions, this could be lowered down, but in general, if the quality of the proposals do not reach that level, it will be difficult to be successful in the future. So this is the 2 points that we need to address in this second PECS period. This just to reinforce the message. So far, the evaluation is done through these 4 criteria that you see in the left hand side of the slide, but we didn't see any actual improvement along the years in all the criteria, but the 4th one, which is, however, the less relevant one because it's more an administrative criteria. So every time that we present the PECS call in the country, we give a short training on how to write a good proposal, and we really want to pass the message that it is extremely important to participate to these training sessions because there's a lot of hints that are given in order to avoid basic mistakes that we see many times during the evaluation of proposals. So a summary of the main drawbacks that we have encountered in the first PECS period, and this is essentially to derive the recommendation or to build the plan for the second PECS period. I already went through this. Essentially is the lack of awareness of and competition on the market in order to find the niche areas or the developments that are not already done in Europe. The fact that the proposals are not leading to clear products or services at higher TRL, but in most of the cases, they stay at lower TRL without any real improvement along the year. So in theory, we need multiple contracts with one entity to go from TRL 1, 2 up to TRL 7, 8. So with the first contract, you increase between 2 and 4, and then between 4 and 6, and then from 6 and 8. So it needs many successful proposals to be done in a row in order to reach the desired level. This is just to give an overview on the areas. This point is good in a sense that there's a good share of proposals and implemented and commitments, so implemented contract in the various areas. This is a good perspective for the future in a sense that having various capabilities in many areas gives more possibility to participate in many optional programs in the future. But of course, this depends on also on the funding, the overall funding that Bulgaria can afford in the future in order to subscribe to optional programs. But at least the variety of commitments that we have in PECS is good. What is less good is the split between industry and academia. As you can see, it is more 50-50, the composition between industrial with the contracts with industry and with research institutes. And this must be increased, must be improved in order to reach a 75-25%. Why this split? The main reason is because most of the contracts in ESA are industrial contracts. So, and we cannot avoid this. We rely on industry to build the missions, and we need a competitive industry in each country in order to participate to our programs. So far we have seen a slight improvement along the years, but still not enough to be an associate member. And we need many entities in many areas in order to compete. So not just one or two for each area. So the path to the associate membership. This is more, let's say, the general framework. There are some points that I already mentioned. What is good to mention here is that even when you will be an associate member and you will participate to optional programs, there will always be the possibility to run a national program, which is called in that case RPA, requesting party activity. And this is to keep the focus on developing the national industry. This is a very good program that an associate member can implement. And it's essentially a kind of continuation of PECS. These are the points that are derived from the analysis of the first PECS period, and that permits us to derive the key points to work on the second PECS period. I will explain this better in one of the next slides. This I already explained. I don't want to bother you. You will find the slides because it's a kind of repetition. But what I want to go and spend some time is this slide. So there are two aspects. On one side is the technical part. So putting more focus on industry, putting more focus on including customers and partners and being a part of the supply chains in Europe, and the creating the workforce. So giving good and effective education programs in the country in order to have the people in the future to work in space. But on the other side, there's also the fact that in order to be successful in the future, there should be an increase of funds along the years. So it's not something that we need to address in 2023-24, but in the long term, we need to increase the level of funding. But here, and the tricky point is in this part. We, together with the government of Bulgaria, we can increase funds only if we are able to spend. So if there is no clear trend of improving the capabilities of the local industry, it will be not possible to increase the funds, because otherwise there will be not enough actors to use these funds and to spend in the optional programs. So it's a kind of circle. So if you don't have the industry, you cannot really raise funds. And if you don't raise funds, you cannot develop industry. So we are in this phase. Through PECS, we need to increase the capabilities of the industry in a way that in the future, the funds can be better used. And this will trigger also the increase. In order to do so, we are preparing some additional measures with respect to the first PECS period. And I will go to that. The outcome of the 8th PECS call has been already, I think, presented by Petya. It was done in 2022. The evaluation is completed. But we still cannot communicate the results. But this will happen very, very soon, because the recommendations have been derived. So the bidders will be informed very soon, before Christmas, I guess. So going to the next slide, this is our plan for 2023 and 2024. So the first thing is that we as ESA, we are putting more effort on doing company visits, and next year we will do multiple rounds in different period. I can anticipate, I didn't put in the slide because it's not official, so but I can anticipate that there will be one early in 2023, one around mid 2023, and one towards the end of the year. In addition to that, we will also provide additional training course. So I mentioned already before the training course that we are giving during the briefing, so the opening of a call, of a PECS call. But there we are going to organize additional trainings on also other topics. So not only proposal writing, which is really important to improve the level and the quality of proposals, but also on other aspects that are relevant in space, like the CSS standards or a general introduction on ESA activities, project management, PA/QA, and everything that permits to increase the quality of the work and the developments done in Bulgaria. Another point is we are trying to figure out the measures to improve this international cooperation. So apart from the 20% of budget that we can give in PECS, we are promoting and we are inviting entities to participate in ESA Industry Days, because there you can find activities done by other entities in Europe and assess where you can find an area for you to develop and to create links or partnerships with them. I will have another slide later, but next year in May, we are organizing a conference within our countries, so all the PECS and new associate members. And this will be a very good opportunity for Bulgarian entities to participate and try to foster this international cooperation. Another point we need to work on is to find new industrial players. So far in PECS, we have seen not a real increase in the number of new players. Yes, some of them have been participating, some new players, but not really a lot. So we need to improve this aspect. And to do so, we are thinking, and this will come early in 2023 as well, in implementing an industrial coordinator in Bulgaria. An industrial coordinator is a person that lives in Bulgaria, so knows the situation on the territory, and can help us in scouting new players, creating links, putting people in contact, spreading and promoting the information on opportunities that might come, and essentially is a facilitator for us in order to address all the points that I've mentioned so far. The ITT for this industrial coordinator is under preparation. I cannot say any date because this depends essentially on the contracts office, but I can say that this will open in the first quarter 2023. This is the conference I was mentioning. It's planned between 22nd and 24th of May 2023. The deadline is tomorrow, so really, if you didn't so far, I strongly suggest to submit an abstract for giving a presentation there. You have different sessions you can check online, and you can apply for any of them depending on your area of expertise. The deadline is tomorrow, but it will be open, I think, 1 week more. So if you don't meet the deadline, consider that we will give one additional week to submit the abstract. Even if the abstract is not accepted for an oral presentation, we really recommend you to come if you're interested in, because most of our partners in the countries that we are managing will be there. So it will be extremely useful to meet people working in the same area, exchanging ideas, finding possible cooperation or new ideas, and discussing with those people. Last slide, just to put some contacts. So I'm essentially the country desk officer for Bulgaria. So I'm following the implementation of most of the activities in Bulgaria related to ESA. So you can contact me anytime, and I will try to help you. Could be for finding partners, could be for having a consultancy with an expert. If I don't know the information, I can ask colleagues in ESA that are expert in any area. So I'm here to help you. So anything, you can contact me anytime, and I will be happy to help. So this concludes the presentation. Going back to the focus of the workshop and the fact that we are talking about Copernicus, everything that I said in my slide is applicable to Earth observation activities. So during the open calls in PECS, you can present activities related to Earth observation. The easiest way is related to Copernicus, the development of services based on Earth observation data and Copernicus data. And as was also anticipated in the first presentation, the possibility to develop cross-sectorial services is really something that we need to address in the near future. So this is a kind of trend that we are seeing, and I think it could be one of the areas where there's a good perspective for the future.
Thanks, Michele.
So if there is any question.
Yes, we are a bit ahead of time, but there are two questions already asked in the chat. I read it fast. So the first one is how the Bulgarian PECS performance compares to the other PECS countries.
It's difficult to respond. The reason why it's difficult is because each country has its own capabilities in some areas. So it's difficult to compare. I think that there's some trends of improvement in Bulgaria. So some countries have became associate member after one period of PECS, which did not happen in Bulgaria. But I can tell you that now they are facing some difficulties. And in some cases, it's been a bit premature for them to be associate member. And now they are struggling with the geo return because they don't have enough industry to be successful in optional programs. So I can understand that it's also appealing to be associate member as soon as possible, but really it should not be the main target per se. The main target should be to develop the industry and the products and services that players in Bulgaria can develop. This will automatically lead to the association membership. It's not the other way around. It's not being associate member that will permit to develop the industry. This is for true. It will be rather a difficulty if you are an associate member and you don't have the resources to sustain the industry.
Okay, thanks a lot, Michele. There are two more questions, but because we are already more or less 10 minutes ahead of time, may I ask you to look for those two questions in the chat and reply to them?
Yeah, I will.
Yeah, please.
I will reply on the chat. Yes.
Okay, please. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
So our next presentation will give us more insights on the European space policy and it will be given by Mr. Eduard Escalona Zorita from the EUSPA, European Agency for the Space Program. Okay, Eduard.
Hello, good morning. I hope you can hear me and you can see my slides. So thank you for the invitation again after the previous workshop 2 years ago, in which we still were not EUSPA. Actually, 2 years ago when we presented, we still were GSA, only dealing with GNSS primarily, with the two EU space programs, Galileo and EGNOS. But now many things have changed, and it's my pleasure to be here to present a little bit the updates on the role and responsibilities, and how can we support the downstream market uptake of Copernicus in particular, but responsibilities on the whole EU space program. So I obviously have focused my presentation on Copernicus, but let me just give an overview of what is the role of the agency that, as I said, changed the role and the scope last year after the new space regulation, and basically with the idea of putting under the same umbrella all the EU space program components, the existing ones and also the future ones. So meaning the ones that already had with navigation, with Galileo and EGNOS, the new one, not the new one, but for us, Copernicus with the Earth observation program, but also the new ones with the secure satellite communications, GovSatcom, which now rename of the evolution of it will be IRIS², as you all know, and with a space situational awareness program as well, with SST and so on. So we have different responsibilities for each of them, but for all we have to support and foster the usability of the space services in the downstream market. So mostly market development, and we have been doing that for Galileo and EGNOS, but now since last year we have also started to do that for Copernicus, and how we do that. Basically, we are a user-driven agency. So basically, everything what we do is to try to support the users, to try to characterize the users, to know what are the different markets that can benefit from, in this case, from Earth observation. But our segmentation is integrated, so we take into account all the space components, because the way that you address the stakeholders in one of the value chains of each of the market segments is similar. So so we take an integrated approach, let's say, when we think about the verticals that we address. So these are the ones that we are considering, which was extended after the incorporation of Earth observation. But in particular for Copernicus, since it's a program that it's on the contrast with navigation with Galileo and EGNOS, that EUSPA is the main responsible for the user uptake and market development for all the different aspects. For Copernicus, a little bit different, because it's a program that was already existing with a lot of activities, very good activities done for user uptake. And the role of EUSPA is basically to complement those activities. So not to change anything that had been done in the past, but just to reinforce the activities on user uptake and try to put focus as well on the commercialization of solutions that are using Copernicus and Earth observation in general. So this is why we say that we are focusing on the other users, or the non-core users, which are those users that are not basically driven by policies, like, for example, environmental fields or civil protection, which is the already current focus of the entrusted entities managing the different Copernicus services, as well as the European Commission and the Copernicus Forum and the different member states. But our focus is to support those efforts towards the industry, let's say. So we want to support really the creation of new solutions that are using Copernicus via SMEs, via new innovation, but also via big companies in the different areas of the industry that currently are not so aware of the benefits of using Earth observation data within their processes. So how do we do that though? So we are now starting to put in place different tools, but basically it's all about raising awareness and supporting the downstream market to facilitate the usage of the data, the services, and the creation of new products. So we have started to put together different tools like implementation of demonstrators, use cases, pilots, also different tools that facilitates the data, the access to data, but not on the let's say on the side of the infrastructure, but more on the last mile. So what are the specific characteristics that specific industry needs from Earth observation data, which they are not, in many cases, they are not Earth observation savvy. So they don't know how to take this data, or they don't even know that it exists. And even if we would tell them this data can be used for that, they wouldn't know how to take it and use it basically in their own processes. So to support them in this last mile on how to use this data, or support companies to provide these last mile services to the industry, as well as trying to find best practices, standards, and certifications, because it's not everything bottom-up approach, understanding the needs and gaps of the users and trying to cover them, but also in many cases there are some policies that affect the industry, like for energy, the new policies on the REPowerEU. For raw materials, there's a new Raw Materials Act, which has an impact on the downstream industry, and we are also trying to cover that part. So, and all this we do in collaboration with all the existing stakeholders that I was mentioning before, with the interested entities, the Commission, the ESA, EUMETSAT, and as well we have started to have discussions with the member states to see how can we collaborate as well at the national level. So part of the work that we do and where we start basically is with the market intelligence. We say that because we are user driven, the first part is to understand who are the users that can benefit from this and what are the markets of these users. And for that, we published at the beginning of this year, in January, the first joint Earth observation and GNSS market report. In the past, we were publishing a GNSS report because that was our responsibility, but now we have incorporated as well Earth observation, and we published this report covering all these market segments that I mentioned before, and giving insights about market trends, about forecasts of revenues that are generated by Earth observation solutions within the market, different types of applications that we have identified within each market segment that can benefit from Copernicus. So all this can be found in this market report that you can find and use for free to download in EUSPA's website. And we have received very, very positive feedback from the industry, from investors, because it gives them a very good overview of the space market, space downstream market, which in many cases it's a little bit unknown for these people what it can be done. They are very much aware of upstream and what satellites can do and what the new space can do, but not on all the applications on the downstream market, which is a very interesting field of application and where we believe that a lot of innovation can be done. And the other part of the let's say of this market intelligence that I was mentioning is the what we call our user consultation platform, which we are putting together user community, but industrial user community mostly in different market segments, and we are collecting their feedback in terms of technology trends, market trends, research gaps, as well as user needs and requirements, and trying to talk the language of the user. So not talking only the Earth observation language, but also the language of the user, because this is much better for them to be able to share what are their needs, and then it's our responsibility, our task, to try to map the current availability and of Earth observation solutions, of other technologies that can address those gaps, because that can be very valuable feedback for the program in order to assess if that can be considered for the evolution of the program or not. So we had our first user consultation platform in October together with the EU Space Week, in which we address these 7 market segments that you can see here below. We are going to do this user consultation platform every year. This is mainly the event, the culmination event in which we put together the users, but this is a continuous work that we are doing in collecting needs and requirements, talking to experts, talking to different companies, and putting this together. And at the end of this process, we want to publish what we call the reports on user needs and requirements. So there is one document per market segment in which all these aspects that we discussed are summarized. And the first documents that outcome of these discussions of the last user consultation platform, we're expecting to be published by the first quarter of next year. And we will continue with the rest of the market segments. As I was saying, it's something that we want to do every year, but each market segment will be covered every 2 years. So to give a bit of space to evaluate the market and to evaluate the evolution of the technologies and the market and so on. So just some snapshots of some screenshots of the event that we had past October. We had eventually more than 300 users attending in Prague, but many more connected remotely as well, because it was a hybrid event. So we expect that in the next editions we will have even more attendance to this event. And then I wanted to briefly mention the funding opportunities, because we have different tools, as I was saying, to support the downstream industry to create solutions that are based in space technologies. And particularly these two, Horizon Europe and Cassini, the Cassini initiative, are the two relevant ones for Earth observation. So the one for Horizon Europe, you might know the different calls that are in different clusters, different areas. Ours in particular, we are responsible for one specific set of calls in cluster 4, which are the space calls. And we had the first call that was closed last year, and the first projects have started already between last month and next month. They have already started the first projects that we have on using Copernicus and Earth observation. And the second call is now open. You can see here it was open in October, end of October, and the deadline for application is 16th of February. We have different calls that are relevant for Copernicus. You can see them here highlighted in the square. We have a public commercial procurement tool activity action, which basically this tool is it's very wide in terms of scope or area theme that can be covered. But basically what we're looking here is to support public entities to do a pre-commercial procurement, so to pre-buy some research that currently is not in the market, but can support the testing and the analysis of some technology that is currently not widely commercially available. So it's a very valuable tool that we receive feedback from public institutions that they were interested in. And this is the second time that we have such a tool. And this is the first one that we have, including Copernicus. So this for public institutions is, we believe, it's not a huge budget, but we believe that it's a good tool for starting to analyze the applicability of Copernicus in many of the areas that they could be interested in. And then we have three other calls, so two specifically for Copernicus, which are one innovation action and one research and innovation action, with a budget of 9.6 million each. They have different characteristics. If you know what is an innovation action or a research and innovation action from all the calls of Horizon from the Commission, basically it's more of the level of technology readiness that is expected at the end of the project. So the higher the TRL, the more closer to the market it is. So innovation actions are expected to produce a product or pre-product that is close to the market. And the research and innovation action is doing lower TRL, like 4 or 5, analyzing more research and development rather than product development. So for innovation actions, we always ask for a business plan, for example, to be part of the proposal to make sure that the product that wants to be implemented, it has already some market viability. So the innovation action is looking at, both of them are looking at how to handle data with Earth observation and fusing this data with other types of sources. So the first one is looking more at the application, so looking more at creating specific applications using large amounts of data. And the second one, the research and innovation action, is more how to deal with these amounts of data using different tools like artificial intelligence or high performance computing. And finally, there is another call that is more developing applications, but that are needed with partnership, international partnership. In many cases, there are Earth observation companies in which they can have their activities as well in Europe, but outside of Europe, and they need international partnership for that. So this is a tool that wants to support that research. Then we have in Cassini, we have different activities in Cassini, like matchmaking, putting together with investors. Here I wanted to show just the active one that we have, the My EUSPA competition, in which we are funding the development of different type of commercial solutions. We have 3 different tracks, let's say, or 3 different cuts. The first one is the development of a theoretical idea. This has already closed for submission. It was the 30th of November, but we have 2 different tracks, the creation of prototypes and the creation of products. So here you can see the deadlines. You can find more information in EUSPA's website. But this is done, I don't know if you can see this, or this is in the middle. The creation of different types of solutions in these 3 different challenges that you can see here: Space My Life, Green Planet, and Deep Tech. For the sake of time, I will not go into detail, but you can find much more information of these 3 different challenges and what is expected and how can you submit applications in EUSPA's website and the dedicated My EUSPA website. And we had also launched, as I was saying, we want to foster the development of use cases, demonstrators, pilots for Copernicus, because we believe that is a very nice way of showing to others that they have not done it before that something works. So once we have a demonstrator, we have shown that a specific use case is practically working with actual data, with actual applicability, with involvement of the end user. Other users will be more willing, probably, for sure, to follow the same path. So we want to fund this type of demonstrators. This is a procurement that we launched last year. The submission was closed. It's closed already, and the evaluation is ongoing. But the projects will start next year. But we plan to launch similar tools and similar initiatives in the future. So just follow our news, because next year and in the following years we will launch similar activities, similar opportunities. And the last slide I wanted to show you as well is that we have launched this year what we call the Space Academy, which we want. It's just basically a tool for capacity building, for focusing on entrepreneurs, SMEs, and also innovators, but as well as researchers. Why not? Which basically it's putting together different training activities, different modules specific with experts and trainers and mentors, putting together different information about space services, space data, focus on Galileo, EGNOS, and Copernicus. We had a lot of people subscribed already, a lot of material, and this material is growing every time, and is already available in the website, so you can subscribe. It's completely free of charge. So this is a very nice tool that we're putting there available for the community. And that was the last slide I had. So we'll have to receive any question.
Thank you very much, Eduard, for keeping the time really very well, and also thanks a lot for presenting all those possibilities, not only for doing business research, but also of learning how to do it better with the last slides you show. Do we have questions from the audience? Имаме ли въпроси? Може в чата. Ако не виждам въпроси в чата, при това положение нека да направим почивката, която ще продължи до 11:20, тъй като тогава трябва да започнем с следващата сесия, която ще бъде за програма Коперник възможности и решения. Okay, thanks everyone for the presenters from this session for being very punctual and presenting us this very detailed information for the state of Copernicus and related programs and policies in Europe. So we will do our break now, which will continue until 11:20 Sofia time. As it is mentioned in the agenda, it will be video for Copernicus program. If you scan those two images here, you could enter in the YouTube of Copernicus or in our YouTube of the channel of the Geopolymorphic Cloud, where you could watch as many videos of Copernicus you would like. We will start again at 11:20 Sofia time. Thanks again. See you soon.